This is going to be the stupidest thing you've ever heard. This is going to be the craziest thing you've ever heard. There is nothing in your lives or background that has prepared you to understand the Potter family. You have never seen anybody like them. Quoted from prosecutor Dennis Brooks. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel Something Wicked. My name is Jacqueline, and today we are concluding the Facebook murders case. If you are watching this, then I assume you enjoyed part 1, so thank you. And if you haven't yet seen part 1, make sure to follow the link below because you will need to watch that first before watching this video. The majority of my research was done from two amazing books, Murder Thy Neighbor by James Patterson and Too Pretty to Live by Dennis Brooks, who was also the prosecutor in this case. If you are looking for further information into this case, I recommend both. Now we will get started on part 2, and buckle up because you are in for a real ride. We last left off with Jamie getting into Buddy's truck in the early morning hours of January 31st, 2012, with plans to drive to Billy Payne's house. As Jamie and Buddy drove down Highway 67 in the early morning hours of January 31st, 2012, there was an anxious tension in the vehicle as neither man spoke. After what seemed like an eternity, Buddy pulled into the parking lot of a Pentecostal church located less than a quarter-mile away from the Payne residence. This was so Buddy could get an elevated perspective on the Payne property, which was visible from their location through a rifle scope Buddy had brought in his pocket. Jamie didn't fully understand why they were there until through the scope, Buddy watched Pa Bill leave the house through the front door, lock it, and then get into his pickup truck, turn on the headlights, and leave for work. Jamie wondered how Buddy knew what time Pa Bill left for work in the mornings. It was still dark outside, and their only light source emanated from the moon as the two approached the house. Buddy began giving Jamie orders as if he was back in the military, and when the two reached the Payne house by foot, Buddy motioned for Jamie to follow him around the back to a tool shed. It is estimated that one of the reasons Buddy parked at the church and approached the house by foot was to avoid barking from the Payne's dog Pepper. But how would Buddy know this would work or that they even had a dog? Whichever the case, his plan worked. Pepper never barked, and this is most likely the reason why the dog's life was spared that night. Jamie asked Buddy, quote, "What are we doing here? If Bill sees us, all hell's gonna break loose." Buddy then lifted his pant leg and revealed a gun holstered to his ankle. He took the gun and handed it to Jamie. Jamie recoiled, pushing the gun away. He had never killed anyone before, and he sure wasn't planning on killing Billy and Billie Jean. Buddy reassured him and told him it was just to stand guard. Hesitantly, Jamie took the gun and agreed. They then shuffled across the yard to the back sliding glass door. With the sleeve of his coat, Buddy slowly opened the door, which was always kept unlocked. Jamie would tell investigators during his interrogation later that Buddy was acting like, quote, "a man on a mission." Jamie watched Buddy disappear into the dark house and approach one of the bedrooms. Just after Buddy entered the room, Jamie heard Billy yell, quote, "What the hell?" Then he saw Billie Jean run from the room and escape down the hall into a second bedroom where the nursery was. Those were the last words Billy ever said before he died. They were followed by a single loud crack of a gunshot, then silence. Buddy emerged from the bedroom and looked at Jamie with a deep, concentrated look. Without words, almost telepathically, Jamie knew exactly what Buddy was asking. Against everything screaming at him inside himself, Jamie pointed down the hall to the room where 23-year-old Billie Jean had run, and Buddy followed. When asked later during the investigation why Jamie had told Buddy where Billie Jean had run to, Jamie told investigators, quote, "I don't know. It was like a reaction when he looked at me." Jamie then walked into the house and into Billy's room. The light was on, the only one in the house, and Jamie could see Billy lying on the bed surrounded by his blood. All Jamie could do was stare, frozen in place. It wasn't until Jamie heard another gunshot from the next room that the 38-year-old snapped back to reality. Panicked, Jamie ran out of the house, through the backyard, and back to the truck they left parked at the church. When Buddy arrived, Jamie gave the gun back and the two drove to Jamie's house in silence. Jamie told Buddy to drop him off at the end of the driveway. He did, and as soon as Buddy drove away, Jamie threw up. When agents Scott Lott and Mike Hannon from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations pulled into the Payne residence January 31st, 2012, the scene had already been roped off with yellow tape, and forensic technicians were scattered about taking photos and collecting evidence. The detectives decided the best place to start was around back through the sliding door, just as the killer had. Lott and Hannon wanted to see the same things and walk the same route the killer had so they could visualize the attack. They noted the sliding glass door, the backyard, the tool shed, and the Pentecostal church in the distance. When they entered the house, they were informed the owner, Pa Bill, had seen the two victims alive when he had gotten up to go to work around 5:30 a.m. Pa Bill had also locked the front door behind him when he left. The detectives noted the back door was also how Brad Osborne and Roy Stevens had entered the house, just before Roy found the bodies of Billy and Billie Jean. Lott and Hannon proceeded to Billy's bedroom, where they noted his sex, age, description, and the cause of death: a single gunshot wound to the head, right under the left eye, as well as a deep laceration to his neck. The detectives took note of the brutality of the attack. Billy had essentially been killed twice, one with a gunshot to the head and once with a slit throat, indicating the crime was personal and someone held real resentment towards the Paynes. Billy was lying on the bed lengthwise and face up, and his legs were mostly off the bed with his feet resting on the floor. He was only in his boxer shorts. Lott and Hannon moved to the second bedroom where Billie Jean had been shot. Again, they noted her sex, age, description, and cause of death, which was also a single gunshot wound, but to the right side of her head, just above the ear and exiting out the left side. The theory that this crime was committed out of antipathy was further supported by the fact that this young mother had been shot and killed, probably while begging for her life, while she held her infant son in her arms. The detectives believed the crime was committed by someone who knew what they were doing. It was one of the cleanest scenes they had ever seen. There were no shell casings, no prints, no signs of forced entry, no eyewitnesses, and the dog hadn't even barked. On top of that, each victim had been hit with a kill shot on the first attempt. Burglary was quickly ruled out as a motive as none of the valuables in the house had been taken, including a laptop, a flat-screen TV, a coin collection, cash, and 2 smartphones. Nothing had been overturned or broken to indicate a fight had taken place, and neither victim had defensive wounds on them, suggesting they had been taken by surprise during the attack. Upon further exploration of the house, drugs, including methamphetamine, a meth pipe, and prescription painkillers were found, yet a toxicology report would later show no methamphetamine had been present in the victims at the time of their death. Lindsay Thomas, Billie Jean's best friend, would later tell detectives in her statement that she had visited Billie Jean the day before the murders, and Billie Jean had told her that they were selling drugs in small amounts to help afford baby supplies. Also, if the attack had been drug-related, one would assume the drugs would have been taken from the house. The Paynes owned several firearms, including a few shotguns and a .22 caliber pistol, yet none of these were discovered to be the murder weapon. No knife was ever found either. Without the murder weapons remaining at the scene, murder-suicide was ruled out as a theory. The detectives knew this was no ordinary case. In fact, they were beginning to think it had been a calculated hit. But why? Why would anyone want to kill 2 new parents and leave a baby for dead? After just a little investigation into the lives of Billy and Billie Jean, and coupled with gossip from local townspeople, the detectives would soon get their answer. The name Janelle Potter was quick to come up when chatting with neighbors, and it came up frequently. Detectives Lott and Hannon were told all about the ongoing feud between Janelle's family and Billy's. Just one day after the murders, Johnson County Chief Deputy Joe Woodard and Agent Lott went to the Potter residence to follow up on the leads given by Johnson County residents. They interviewed Janelle for approximately 1 hour within the presence of her parents, bringing to light the feud surrounding them, Billy and Billie Jean. Janelle, Buddy, and Barbara denied any knowledge or involvement in the murders and, in turn, told detectives that the victims, quote, had been harassing the living crap out of her. Janelle continued to tell detectives how she had come to know Billy and Billie Jean, and that after hanging out with them a few times, she began to get uncomfortable since they would party a lot, drink, and do drugs. When asked if the Potters had any idea who could have committed the crime, Janelle stated, quote, "No, actually I don't, and I feel bad about the situation because I didn't want no harm on them." Janelle was also asked about her relationship with Jamie, as per the rumors going around, but Janelle and her parents denied that he was her boyfriend. Jamie was just a friend that would come over and fix the family computer, nothing more. Sadly, without proof, Agent Lott and Deputy Woodard left the Potter residence without making any arrests, and the investigation appeared to be losing steam. However, after Jamie Curd was brought into the station, questioned, and given a polygraph test with his permission, things would turn around for the detectives. When asked about the murders and his involvement, the polygraph test showed that Jamie was being deceitful, and the interrogators questioned him in the areas he showed the most dishonesty. It was a slow start, with Jamie offering mostly just grunts and mumbles, while barely making eye contact through his shaded glasses. As soon as detectives sensed they could push Jamie in a certain area, they pushed. They delved into the idea that Jamie didn't seem like someone who would commit such a heinous crime, and that it must have been Buddy who coerced him into doing it. That Jamie must have been forced by Buddy and had no other choice. The detectives used any avenue that would make Jamie associate with what they were saying or agree to a scenario that left him with the fewest repercussions as possible. This strategy worked, and eventually enough grunts and mumbles were given to piece together the narrative that the interrogators were implicating. This seemed to be a clear cut and dry incident, according to the officers, but just before the questions were over and Jamie was finished in the interrogation room, he asked a question that would muddle the waters of the case in a big way, quote, "Is the CIA here?" Agents Hannon and Lott asked Jamie why he thought the CIA would be there, and Jamie told them that Janelle had a relative in the CIA named Chris. The detectives dismissed the question, truly not knowing where it came from or why it was being asked, but would later discover it was the missing piece to the whole puzzle. Now the detectives had to get Buddy. They knew he was involved, but they needed proof. So they arranged for Jamie to call Buddy, believing he would be able to get him to slip. But instead of calling from the police department, they arranged it so that Jamie would call from the textile mills plant he worked at to ease any suspicions. When Jamie called, Barbara answered. She said she knew he had been booked because she had gotten an email from Chris. Keep in mind the detectives were recording and listening in on this whole conversation. Barbara asked how Jamie was, and he told her he had passed the polygraph test and had been let go. Relieved, Barbara told Jamie she had been praying for him, saying, quote, "We've been praying our hearts out. Janelle even saw an angel today come in the computer room." So like the worst episode of Touched by an Angel ever? She then put Buddy on the phone. It was a stark contrast in pace from Barbara's incessant rambling. In as few words as possible, Buddy asked Jamie how everything was. Jamie told him that the town had been pointing fingers at them, to which Buddy responded, quote, "Jiminy Christmas." Now it was time for Jamie to coax a confession out of Buddy, or at least get as close as he could to one. Stuttering, Jamie asked if Buddy had, quote, "got rid of everything that was from Bill's," to which Buddy answered, quote, "Uh-huh." This wasn't a perfect confession, but it was enough for an arrest warrant. Jamie, being charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, knew he would be going away for life and, at that, had nothing else to say to anyone in the Potter family. Knowing that getting a full confession out of Buddy would be much harder than with Jamie, Agent Lott and Chief Deputy Woodard decided to surprise the Potters in the early morning hours of February 7th with an arrest warrant for Buddy and a search warrant for his home and vehicle. At this time, when Buddy made a move that resembled going for a holstered gun, they pounced on him and took him in for questioning at the station. Agents Lott and Hannon stayed with Buddy while Deputy Chief Woodard searched the Potter residence for any evidence or clues leading to the murder of Billy and Billie Jean. In the interrogation room, Buddy held a strong defense, denying any involvement in the killings. So Lott and Hannon tried tactic number 1. They played the tape for him speaking to Jamie, where he was recorded replying, in response to Jamie asking if Buddy had gotten rid of everything from the Payne residence. Buddy, despite having all the color drained from his face upon hearing this, stated that he must not have heard Jamie correctly. Okay, tactic number 1 didn't work. Now for tactic 2, playing into Buddy's altruistic side, saying, quote, "This is Jamie trying to throw you under the bus. And I know you're not a monster because you spared the baby's life." Still nothing. So they tried tactic 3, tapping into Buddy's love for his family, saying, quote, "The only reason you did it was because you were scared for your family, and you love your family." This hit a nerve with Buddy, and he finally responded with a stern, yet solemn yes. Now they were getting somewhere. The conversation as follows is taken from the book Too Pretty to Live, written by prosecutor Dennis Brooks, and is from the recorded interrogation. Quote, "Hannon, is that why you did it? This world is going to shit?" Buddy, "Yeah, that's the truth." Lott, "That 700-pound gorilla is on your back, and you want him to get off bad, right?" Buddy nodded. Hannon, "This was the only way you knew how to take care of the situation." Then, as if the floodgates had opened, Buddy responded, quote, "When you hear people plotting to cut your daughter in a restroom and take her out the back of the store, and they want to take her and get her so sick in field and murder her, and they want to rape her because she's a virgin, and just so much shit, and..." Hannon interjected, "You had no other choice." Buddy just replied with a short no. The detectives finally had their smoking gun, but they didn't want to stop at that. They had suspicions that the Potter women were involved somehow, so they allowed Buddy to make a call home, veiled as kindness, but it was really to see if Barbara or Janelle would accidentally let something slip. What transcribed was quite interesting to detectives. Buddy told Barbara on the phone that he wanted them to hear from him directly what he had done to Billy and Billie Jean, although it is assumed they already knew. To which Barbara, trying to make a fake alibi for Buddy, said in return, quote, I saw you, you are not guilty because you were here," implying that Buddy had been home the whole night, that he was without sleep and his oxygen tank, so he didn't know what he was saying. Even Janelle came on the line and told Buddy that he had been home the whole night. But Buddy wasn't having it. It wasn't his style, and he told Barbara that Jamie had talked. During the entire interrogation into Buddy, Chris, the CIA agent, was never mentioned once. Meanwhile, back at the Potter residence while Buddy was being arrested, Chief Deputy Woodard was searching the Potter residence with an investigative team while Janelle and Barbara watched. Many items were logged and searched, including a stack of papers that an investigator brought over to put beside Deputy Woodard. As the stack of papers were placed, Barbara reached over, grabbed them, and ripped them in half. These papers were, in fact, printed emails of photographs taken from Facebook that contained images of Janelle, Lindsay, and Billie Jean. One of the photos where Billie Jean was wearing a little bikini held the subject line, "Billie Jean Whore." Deputy Woodard insisted that Barbara hand him the papers as he was obviously drawn to their importance by Barbara's actions. Seized from the Potter residence was their computer and external hard drive, a green spiral notebook containing passwords to various online accounts, 32 firearms, piles of ammunition, and Buddy's truck. After ballistics compared the ammunition found at the Potter residence to the ammunition that was used to kill Billy and Billie Jean, it was determined that they shared very similar characteristics, which would prove useful evidence in a court of law. On top of that, in the back of Buddy's truck, 3 full garbage bags of shredded papers were found. In fact, one woman with the patience of a saint, named Special Agent Miranda Gaddis, was tasked with trying to piece together all the shreds of paper, glue them down, and try as best she could to assemble as many full pages as possible. Like a puzzle. A 2 million piece black and white lines of text horrible puzzle. Considering it was a mere hunch that these shredded papers could be related to the murder investigation, Agent Gaddis had no way of knowing if the month she spent slowly piecing together 3 garbage bags full of paper would lead to anything. But it paid off. Although not every piece of paper was put together, many were completed, and these papers were not found on the computer hard drive or external hard drive. These pages, which had been deleted from the computer, were emails to and from Barbara, Janelle, and Chris, and directly referenced the CIA and what should happen to Billy, Billie Jean, and Lindsay Thomas. Also, the prosecutor in this case, Dennis Brooks, spent night after night poring over the digital emails from the case, almost 1,000 of them, and in them he got to know Chris, the CIA agent. Here is a brief description of what Brooks had to say about Chris from his book, Too Pretty to Live. Quote, "It didn't take long to determine that Chris wrote like he was a homicidal maniac. He used the most vile, revolting language imaginable. He hated people. He killed people. He killed them legally, though, because it was all part of his duties as a CIA agent. Despite his federal employment, Chris must have forgotten practically everything he was ever taught in grammar school. He misspelled words, his writings were a mess, and over I noticed a tendency of Chris's to forget to drop the E in words where he added an ing at the end, such as taking or loving or caring. Now Jamie's inquiry about is the CIA here began to make more sense. It became very evident very quickly to Brooks that Chris did not work for the CIA. And he noticed that Chris, a man who worked at the Central Intelligence Agency and was a trained killer, was beyond captivated with all things to do with Janelle, her family, and their life in small-town Mountain City. Quote, "Everything he ever wrote was Janelle-centric. Her problems were his concerns. Her foes were his enemies. What she liked, he loved." Both Chris and Janelle shared the same writing patterns and spelling errors, and there was one glaring detail about Chris that Barbara and Jamie never seemed to question. Every email ever written from Chris had come from Janelle's email address, bull2dog@aol.com. Chris had told both Barbara and Jamie that he could not use his real email address because it would reveal too much about his identity, so he would have to contact them only through Janelle's. Dennis Brooks very quickly realized that Chris the CIA agent did not exist, because Janelle had made him up and was catfishing her family and boyfriend the entire time, parading as Chris, and all from within her own home. This was proven as the IP address all his emails came from matched the home computer in the Potter residence. Janelle even said that Chris could never speak on the phone because he had a phobia of phones, which is why he always communicated via email. It is believed that Barbara's delusions were being fed with so much nourishment that she willfully neglected to see the signs right in front of her. That this was actually Janelle, her daughter, and not some guardian angel sent to protect their family. And Jamie, who was very much in love with Janelle, would never have thought her to be capable of such writings. You see, as Chris, Janelle could escape the sweet, naive, and innocent daughter persona. Someone sick and frail that had strict rules and was never allowed to speak out of line. As Chris, Janelle could spew her inner hatred and contempt for those around her. She could lash out at Billy for rejecting her and slander Billie Jean for coming into Billy's life. In fact, almost all of the harassing emails that had come from Billy, Billie Jean, and Lindsay had all been fabricated by Janelle herself. She had created a fake war, feeding the fire herself, going back and forth from one side to another. Janelle was the mastermind behind everything. Janelle had contrived entire messages from Lindsay and Billie Jean to her, saying nasty things and threatening her just so she could then copy them from Facebook or topics and paste them into an email and forward them to her mom and Jamie, getting them to believe they were in danger. Janelle's roster of online personas included Chris the CIA agent, Matt Potter, Dan White, Kelly, and 2 guys named Tim and Brian. District Attorney Brooks put it perfectly when he wrote in his book, Too Pretty to Live, quote, "They were men who cared deeply about Janelle. They believed she was pretty, kind, and sweet. They hated anyone who disagreed. They were fiercely protective of her. They were the older, protective brothers that Janelle had probably always craved. Chris was the primary character. Chris had the adventurous life that Janelle lacked. He traveled the world. He had an exciting job. He was important to his country. He had been married to his true love, but alas, was now widowed. He was too busy for a love life, but he was happy, traveling the world, killing bad people with his 3 Great Danes and small Yorkie in tow. And he was a good-looking dude." Brooks stated that Janelle's jealousy for Billie Jean was too much, and once it became public that Billie Jean was going to have Billie's baby, the emails from Chris began. It must have been so confusing and frustrating for Billie Jean, and Lindsay to keep hearing and reading retorts to messages they never sent but were accused of writing. Lindsay Thomas and Tara Osborne had also gone as far as filing harassment charges against Janelle. Tara filed for an order of protection in early 2011 as Janelle was calling her house consistently. However, this charge would be thrown out. Shortly after, Lindsay also charged Janelle with phone harassment, but again, at the end of 2011, the judge ruled that Lindsay did not prove Janelle guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and the case was dropped. Brooks decided to sit down with Lindsay to get her side of the story. Lindsay told him that the harassment started shortly after accepting a friend request from Janelle on Facebook. Then the calls and nasty messages started. Sometimes Janelle would call her house 27 times a day and just breathe on the other end or hang up. Although Lindsay admitted to responding to some of the messages and being angry, she had never written messages threatening Janelle's life, nor had Billie or Billie Jean. In fact, the feud was so stupid and silly in Lindsay's eyes that after Billie and Billie Jean had been killed, she hadn't even thought of the Potter family or that they could have been involved. And if you think that's where the twists and turns end, you would be wrong. There's still more to come. Buddy's trial started on October 7, 2013, just over a year and a half from the day of the murders. Buddy's attorney, Randy Fallon, used several defense strategies, saying that Buddy was not in his right mind during the interrogation as he didn't have his oxygen with him, and then, taking one hell of a left turn, indicated there was actually a completely different gunman altogether, unrelated to the Potter family. This strategy came from the fact that methamphetamine was found on top of a dresser in the room Billie Jean had been killed. The meth appeared to have been recently used, and considering the autopsy found no drugs in either Billie or Billie Jean's system, Fallon argued the user must have been there that morning and was the shooter. He also argued that some Lucky Charms were missing and that it might have been a leprechaun. However, Buddy's casket was sealed when an interesting fact about the bullets used to kill Billie and Billie Jean was revealed. Bullets are made of lead, which is a metal that can be scratched and marked easily. After the search of the Potter house, unused rounds of ammunition were found that contained man-made cuts on the exposed portion of the assembled bullets. These markings were not manufacturing identifiers. They had been scratched on by Buddy. Agent Lott testified that he had never seen anything like that in his 27 years of working in the field, and those same markings were found still identifiable on the bullet that killed Billie. The bullet found that killed Billie Jean was too destroyed to see any unique markings, but the round was determined to show similarities to bullets that Buddy did own and the gun believed to have been used in the murder. Also, just a sad little side note, the round that killed Billie was found in the pillowcase he was sleeping on, but the round that killed Billie Jean was harder to locate because it had landed in baby Tyler's bouncy seat near where Billie Jean had been shot. Buddy was said to have sat void of emotion throughout his whole trial. Many people took the stand to testify, but Tracy Greenwell, Billie's younger sister, had something particularly interesting to say. Tracy told the court how she met Janelle and had wanted to help her get out of the house more, that she felt sorry for her. So when Billie suggested that he and Tracy set Janelle up with Jamie, she agreed. She said that Jamie had been to Billie's place many times and knew the layout well, which is information that Buddy would have needed to execute the murders as efficiently as he did. She told the court that her father, Pa Bill, would leave for work every morning at 5:30 a.m. and that Billy would depart for work between 6:30 and 7 a.m., leaving only an hour gap in between in which Buddy and Jamie could have entered the house without Pa Bill being there. She also told the court about a 2-inch thick binder that Billy kept containing all the printed out comments and messages from Facebook and topics that gushed vile and nasty things about himself and Billie Jean. Billy had even told Tracy that he suspected it was Janelle all along and that Chris didn't exist. In fact, Billy had executed a plan to prove his suspicions were correct. He went to work one day and told Jamie some gossip that he had fabricated, and lo and behold, when he got home, it was on topics. So he knew Jamie had told Janelle and Janelle had posted about it. The jury only deliberated for a few hours before coming back with a verdict of guilty of first-degree murder on 2 counts. Again, Buddy sat emotionless. In his eyes, he was protecting his family. One can only imagine what went through his mind after finding out his own daughter had conned him into committing murder on her behalf and thus spending the rest of his life in prison. But like a true soldier, Buddy never let the world see those emotions. Jamie's trial was hastened by the fact that Jamie was willing to cooperate. Jamie admitted that he fully believed Chris to be a real person. He spoke about visiting the Potter house and how Barbara would talk relentlessly about the feud going on and how they needed to handle it. Jamie told detectives and attorney Brooks about Buddy's stories in the CIA, how Barbara referred to Chris as her son, and how he had loved Janelle very much. By then, Jamie had been in confinement for 2 years and had plenty of time to think about the situation he had found himself in. Jamie admitted that he knew Janelle had a thing for Billy before they became a couple. He and Billy had spoken about Janelle at work and how Billy didn't think it would work between them. Jamie recounted, quote, "She wasn't his type. Bill was a player. He was the type who just wanted to drive to a girl's house, pick her up, and take her wherever. That Janelle would have been too much of an annoyance given her parents. Bill even nicknamed her, quote, the shut-in." Jamie acknowledged during his imprisonment that up until that point, the extent of his criminal background only included 1 speeding ticket. Jamie had never been in trouble with the law before, and when asked how he felt about the situation, he said, quote, "Bad, horrible. He was like a brother. I thought Chris was real. I thought there was someone I was talking to there, and Janelle, the way she would talk to me, it was like a bonding or a family, and it's like, it's all a lie." When asked if Jamie felt he had been manipulated by the Potter family, he said yes. Jamie also told Brooks that if he had never met Janelle or had never been involved in the murders, he would have spent his life living in his childhood home and working at the textile plant. Jamie pled guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder and received 25 years for his cooperation in the case. Buddy may have pulled the trigger and Jamie may have assisted, but it was clear to attorney Brooks that criminal charges needed to be pursued against Janelle and Barbara as well, as they were the real instigators of the double murder. During the time when attorney Brooks was reading pages and pages of emails between Barbara, Jamie, Janelle, and Chris, and after he had already suspected that Janelle was indeed Chris, he came across one particular email that gave him the notion that Janelle had conspired to commit murder. Although it wasn't concrete proof, it was a very good place to start. In an email between Jamie and Chris wrote, quote, "She really loves you, man. She has never loved anyone like she loves you. I see it all over her. And you are very blessed for sure. And you have a great girl, and these motherfuckers just want to make her life hell, and I hope she don't think about killing herself. She has you to live for and her mom and dad." When Janelle wrote, "I hope she don't think about killing herself," it was clear she was trying to influence and manipulate Jamie to take Billy and Billie Jean out of the picture. Proving that Janelle was Chris was also necessary, and to do this, Brooks needed the assistance of linguistics expert Dr. Robert Leonard. Dr. Leonard was tasked with comparing written works from Chris and known writings that Janelle had made. The challenge was to compile as many writings written by Chris as possible that convinced and manipulated Jamie, Barbara, and Buddy to commit murder, and would convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that the murders would not have happened without Chris's influence. Brooks compared Janelle's crime to that of Charles Manson even, given that neither of them actually did the killing themselves, but instead had others kill for them. It was a challenging tactic, but it worked. Similarly, Brooks also wanted to convict Barbara and thus needed to prove that, again, without her encouragement, the murders would never have happened. This was also very difficult as Barbara was more of a, quote, cheerleader on the sideline yelling out cheers for her side. But again, with enough compiled writings of Barbara's, Brooks had been certain he could get a jury to convict Barbara as well. In one of his closing statements, Brooks addressed the jury saying, quote, "If you can't imagine these crimes happening without these women, then you know in your heart what your verdict must be. You have before you the two people most responsible for Bill Payne and Billie Jean Hayworth lying there dead, and a live baby that was left without a parent back in 2012. We ask you to bring justice to these deaths." In his efforts to convict Barbara, Brooks revealed to the jury that Barbara had emailed herself a web link just 2 weeks before the murders, answering her own question, quote, "Can God forgive a murderer?" She was clearly trying to absolve her own guilt and cover her bases. This, along with email upon email of hatred, spiteful messages pushing and urging the murders to happen, was what helped to seal Barbara's fate. Emails saying things like, quote, "So you think that it will be a week or so, things will be happening? We are thinking different, sooner, and ready. We will see. It may be sooner than anything thinks. Yes, we've had enough and we want peace and no one here wants to kill, but we will." End quote. They all need to go and the ones left need to be given a big scare as they watch and wonder, am I next? Whatever and whenever you want to do whatever, contact Bud. He is fed up and ready. Before the jury was sent to deliberate, Brooks pulled one more trick out of his sleeve. He and his investigator had actually managed to track down the real Chris that Janelle based her character on and called him to testify on the stand, a man she really had gone to school with named Chris Chadden. Chris lived in Delaware, his father was the chief of police, and he himself also worked in law enforcement, but not the CIA. It must have been very out of the blue for him when Agent Scott Lott contacted him in 2012 about Janelle Potter, a girl he had gone to school with a decade ago. You see, Janelle had actually used real photos of Chris from his Facebook page in creating the alias of her Chris from the CIA. When asked about Janelle, Chris said that he did remember her from high school, but didn't think of her really since then. They had different experiences in school, he hung out with the popular crowd, and Janelle didn't really seem to have a group that she fit with. He remembered her as strange, and in some of the classes they shared together, she would try to hang out with him, almost as if she had a crush on him, but he always politely declined her attention. When Chris heard that Janelle had used his identity to create a CIA agent that facilitated the murder of 2 innocent people, he remained stoic but was very curious, as one would expect. Chris had actually accepted a friend request from Janelle years earlier and, after accepting, had checked out her page to see what she had been up to in the time since high school. But after seeing nothing but dog pictures and many religious quotes, he unfriended her almost immediately. On the stand, Chris told the jury the extent of his involvement in the crime and his interactions with Janelle in high school, saying, quote, "She was very bizarre. She was one of those kids who was very strange. She always had issues. She was always complaining about a problem with somebody." Throughout his entire testimony, Janelle didn't try to hide in embarrassment. Instead, she never took her gaze off Chris, tracking his movements and words the entire time, quote, "She looked at him with an unwavering gaze." Janelle's defense took the stance that Janelle was not intelligent enough to organize and carry out the kind of premeditated plot involved in these murders. It is also interesting that Buddy refused to take the stand during his wife and daughter's trials, where he could have potentially aided their case by taking the blame. He He could have said they had nothing to do with it and that it was him alone, and although it probably wouldn't have worked, it could have helped with a lesser sentence. Perhaps Buddy felt he had been a pawn in their scheme and was resentful that he had been hoaxed by his own family. The writings were enough to convict both Potter women, and in July 2015, both Barbara and Janelle were convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Upon hearing the verdict, Billy Payne and Billie Jean's families erupted in tears, relieved they finally were able to get justice for their loved ones. Both Janelle and Barbara maintained their innocence, saying that they must have been hacked and that Janelle had never fabricated Chris's identity. During the trial, many truths were brought to light. Billy was never part of a drug gang and was never under investigation by the CIA, nor under surveillance of local law enforcement. Lindsay Thomas, Tara Osborne, Billy, and Billie Jean had never perpetuated the feud to the extent that Janelle had claimed, and in fact, had never even written most of the messages Janelle claimed came from them. They didn't even know most of them existed. Lindsay and Billie Jean were not the instigators of the feud between them, as Janelle had claimed. On the stand, Lindsay Thomas said that it all started after they accepted friend requests from Janelle on Facebook. Shortly after that, Janelle started posting things about them, saying that they were, quote, really mean people, really mean girls. Janelle would go and tag herself in their photos on their Facebook profiles and then repost those photos on her own Facebook profile. Lindsay called Janelle to ask her to please stop posting about them, but Janelle continuously denied any involvement. After this, things escalated into the all-out war it became, which was really a one-sided war of just Janelle feuding with herself. Did Janelle ever really love Jamie? Or was she just using him the entire time to carry out her master plan? It was even revealed that Janelle had been two-timing Jamie during their relationship. Well, sort of. Janelle met Bob Meehan, a 38-year-old janitor living in Pennsylvania, online, and they quickly developed an online relationship. They started dating in 2010 and into 2011, where they would declare their love for each other daily. Janelle even went so far as to ask Bob for a ring, which he bought and sent to her in the mail, although he denies it was specifically an engagement ring. All the while, Janelle was referring to Jamie as her husband when they were alone and telling him how much she loved him. Bob broke things off with Janelle after he supposedly found out she had a boyfriend, but it is not disclosed how he found this out. Bob and Janelle never met face-to-face, except for one time, when attorney Brooks decided to call Bob to the stand during Janelle's trial. Needless to say, on this first date, Bob wouldn't have a hard time seeing all the red flags. And was Buddy ever actually in the CIA? Well, there is suspicion surrounding that also. Attorney Brooks discovered that Buddy was being, quote, prosecuted in federal court in Pennsylvania for claiming military honors he did not possess. And when Agent Lott contacted the CIA asking about Buddy, they claimed Marvin Potter had never been affiliated with the organization. But is it really surprising that the CIA wouldn't disclose information about their agents, current and past? When Brooks spoke with an unnamed individual who had been very close with Buddy, they explained that when Buddy had been in Vietnam, he had taken part in a CIA-run mission that unfortunately led to the destruction of an innocent village, and thus was, quote, wiped from the government files. This resulted in the medal that Buddy was supposedly entitled to vanishing from the books, as in the eyes of the government the mission had never happened. So was Buddy delusional and believed he had been in the CIA when he hadn't? Was he a trained fighter or just conveniently calculated? He did, after all, kill Billy and Billie Jean with surgical precision, and we do know that he owned and operated guns on a daily basis. Perhaps he was far more skilled as a Marine than anyone thought. But if Buddy had been CIA and in the military, wouldn't he have known that Chris, in all likelihood, wasn't real? Surely he would have known that his writings and actions weren't proper conduct for someone actually in the CIA. I guess we will just have to form our own opinions on the matter. Christy Grover, Janelle's older sister, who was now estranged from the family, was called to the stand and had some interesting things to say about her younger sister, which really sheds light on the kind of person Janelle is. Christy said that although Janelle did suffer from mental disabilities, she was far smarter than her parents ever truly knew. In fact, Janelle played on her parents' ignorance to get things she wanted and manipulate them. Christy told the court that when Janelle was little, she would claim that due to her disability, she was unable to perform certain tasks and thus got her parents to do them for her. But as soon as her parents were gone, Janelle would laugh and go do them herself behind their backs. Christy also said that Janelle had a very bad and immature temper. If Janelle lied about something and was later confronted about it, she would scream and thrash and have a full-on temper tantrum. Also, Janelle had diabetic ketoacidosis, which, quote, occurs when cells are unable to get needed glucose because of a lack of insulin, and is a life-threatening condition. Janelle was often in and out of hospitals due to this, but Christy asserted that she exacerbated her situation by eating inappropriate foods to spike her blood sugar for attention. Interestingly enough, although Christy was flesh and blood with Janelle, Barbara, and Buddy, she was more than willing to sign a statement and testify in court against them. Her own family. If this doesn't speak volumes to the kind of people they were, I'm not sure what does. Both Janelle and Barbara tried to appeal their verdicts shortly after imprisonment, but both were rejected. Both are serving back-to-back life sentences at the Tennessee Prison for Women and will be eligible for parole in year 2072. Buddy is serving his punishment at Whiteville Correctional Facility and is eligible for parole in the year 2132. Most recently, Barbara Potter was granted a new trial after her post-conviction attorney, Scott Schultz, argued that her attorney during the trial, Randy Fallon, was not able to represent her appropriately as he had also represented her husband, Buddy, and was a conflict of interest. As of this recording, Barbara rejected her chance at a new trial and instead reached a deal with prosecutors, pleading guilty and apparently cutting her sentence in half. Barbara now has to only serve 25 years. Well, that is the end of part 2 of the Facebook murders. Do you think Buddy was ever in the CIA? How long before you figured out Janelle was actually Chris? Please leave your comments in the comments section as I would love to hear your thoughts on this truly wild case. Also, I am including a link to a video tribute made by one of Billie Jean's friends after her death, and it is full of photos of Billie and Billie Jean so you can really see what kind of people they were and the love they had for each other. It is heartbreaking to watch, but also so moving. Please take a second to check it out. Finally, I have an Instagram account, so if you want to see some behind the scenes into past, current, and future cases, as well as sneak peeks into my fairly boring life, then please follow me on Instagram at somethingwicked_TC. My next video will be another unsolved mystery for those of you who really enjoyed my coverage of the Jennifer Fergate case about the boy in the box, or AKA America's Unknown Child. So hit the notifications button so you don't miss this mysterious and tragic account. As always, if you liked this video, please share it and feel free to talk about me behind my back with your friends. Don't forget to check out the tribute on Billie and Billie Jean in the link below. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Bye!